The first time Clara saw the house, she felt a chill creep up her spine, but not the usual kind of cold. This was the kind that clung to your bones, the kind that whispered warnings she didn't understand. The Victorian-style house loomed at the end of a narrow, fog-choked street, its windows dark and blank like eyes refusing to see. The "For Rent" sign had been nailed crookedly into the overgrown lawn, creaking with each gust of wind, and she knew somehow that it was calling her. Clara wasn't a believer in omens. At 27, fresh from a messy breakup and desperate for independence, she simply saw a house she could afford. The rent was cheap, unusually so, and the agent had seemed in a hurry to close the deal, muttering something about the previous tenants leaving, abruptly. She hadn't asked why. The first night was quiet, except for the house itself. She thought it was the wind at first, the floorboards groaning under the weight of years, doors shifting in their frames, the soft tick-tick-tick of a radiator kicking in somewhere deep within the walls. She unpacked, tried to ignore the sensation that the shadows in the corners of the rooms weren't quite ordinary. It started with small things. A picture frame she hadn't touched would be slightly askew. A drawer she remembered locking would be open in the morning. She chalked it up to her mind playing tricks, until the whispers started. At first it was barely audible, soft, almost like the rustling of leaves. But soon she could hear words, names, her name. Clara! The voice came from the hallway outside her bedroom. She froze, heart hammering, eyes scanning the dark shapes. The hallway was empty. Days passed. Clara tried to convince herself she was imagining things, that stress and loneliness were conspiring to haunt her mind. But the house was alive. Not in the way a creaking floor or drafty window suggested life, but in a way that felt deliberate, patient, intelligent. She began to notice the patterns. Every night at exactly 2:17 a.m., the whispers came. They weren't just voices, they were memories. Voices of people who had lived here before her. The previous tenants, perhaps, or those who had died. She started keeping a notebook, writing down everything she heard. Names, events, fragments of conversations, cries for help. Then came dreams. Clara dreamed of a little girl, pale and silent, standing at the foot of her bed. Her eyes were wide, too wide, and in the dream, she always whispered the same words. Don't wake up. The first time Clara tried to follow the girl, she woke to find the bedroom mirror smeared with something dark, something that couldn't have been her own hand. Her reflection looked wrong, the eyes too big, the lips curled in a smile that didn't belong. By the third week, the house was no longer just a house. It was an extension of her mind, but one that was bending reality to its own will. Doors led to rooms she didn't remember. Hallways stretched impossibly long, with no ceiling in sight. Sometimes, she would wake to find herself in the basement, despite never having gone down. The basement was where the house's memory became unbearable. Old photographs lined the walls. Families who had lived and vanished here, scribbled notes, and one recurring image. A woman who looked eerily like Clara, her eyes wide in terror, trapped behind a glass pane that didn't exist in the real basement. And then the smell started. Something metallic, coppery, and decayed. Clara realized she wasn't imagining it. The house wasn't just remembering, it was feeding on its history. It had absorbed fear, pain, and death, storing them like treasures in its walls, waiting for the next resident. One night, driven by a mix of dread and morbid curiosity, Clara tried to confront it. She shouted into the darkness, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" The house answered. The walls pulsed. The floorboards rattled. Whispers layered over one another until the sound became deafening, a chorus of misery. And then a single clear voice, hers but not hers. "You remember." Clara realized with sudden horror that the house didn't just replay the past, it projected it. It wanted her to experience every tragedy, every scream, every death, and it didn't care if she survived. The next days were a blur of fear. She found herself living in two realities, one where she walked through familiar rooms, and another where the house was a labyrinth of horrors.
Secrets to share.
Shadows moved independently of light. She heard someone crying behind the walls, sometimes a child, sometimes a man, sometimes herself. She tried to leave. Every exit led back inside. Every door opened to another hallway, another trap. It was as if the house was alive, a predator that had marked her as its next story. In desperation, she turned to old journals she found in the attic, faded with age. One entry caught her eye. The house remembers. It feeds on the living to keep the past alive. Do not trust the walls.